Welcome, everyone. I'm Colleen Rice. I'm Executive Director at Leadership Medina County, and I want to welcome you to our Lunch and Learn. And today we have Judy Bodenhamer. We love Judy at Leadership Medina County. She actually is one of our facilitators that comes in and does our Lead Institute. She does Strength Finders amongst a lot of other presentations that she does for our group. And we just really appreciate everything Judy does for us. She's been the managing director and founder of the Client Experience Group for since January of 2016. She's also in her past been an adjunct faculty and facilitator for the University of Akron. She's worked for AT&T and many other companies. She's just a plethora of information. She's a lifetime learner and a lifetime reader. She's constantly reading books and coming to us with ideas. So we greatly appreciate you coming today, Judy, to talk to us about workplace wellness. And to get things started, we wanted to ask, were there any questions in the group as we're getting started? And I wanted to ask all of you a question. Did you print your papers that you're supposed to be printed out for today? And if you didn't, I can stick those in the chat for you so that you can print those out, because you will need those later on, and I don't want you to miss out on the opportunity to participate in that activity. So I gave you a couple minutes, hopefully, to think of any questions, any pre-questions before we get started with Judy. Okay, Judy, it sounds like there are no questions other than it says yes. Please put it in the chat, Colleen. So Lisa, yes, I will put that in the chat for you. Stay tuned.
Perfect. And then Colleen, you'll monitor both Q&A and chat for us.
I sure will. So as you guys have questions, please put them in the chat because we can address those at any time. This is a very free-flowing kind of training for you that Judy's put together for us today.
Perfect. Thank you. And I love Leadership Medina. I do. I love it. I love being part of this community. I think the organization, what it does for the future leaders of our community is amazing. So thank you for the opportunity to spend lunch with you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I think a lot of this, I mean, how many of you are hearing people talking about well-being, people, right? It's been, what you're seeing now is actually what they're saying is stress, anxiety, and depression is going to surpass diabetes and heart disease as far as issues for people. So this is a thing that where historically as business leaders, right, you're like, do we really cross that line? You know, there's all these HIPAA laws, there's all these rules about what should we be talking to our people about. And what we're saying to you now is that the well-being of your teams is really, it lays in your hands. And you have to kind of have the courage to step into the conversation with people, different than we ever have before. Historically, it's always been kind of a taboo thing. I don't want to really have that discussion. I don't need to know about their personal lives. But what you're seeing now is that with the intervention of leadership, you're able to really kind of rescue people from really some very troubling situations. There's not a day that goes by that there's not a story in business that's talking about if a leader, I wish I would have talked to them. I wish I would have understood what was going on, especially if you have remote workers. Remote workers are, especially they are really out there. They don't have the social well-being that's going on in working in an office anymore or coming to an organization as much as they used to. So you don't have eyes on them as much as you normally would. You're going to have to be a lot more intentional about it. So what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about a variety of different things today. That's me. So, and thank you, Colleen. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the current state of well-being. We're going to talk about Gallup's elements of a life well lived. They have surveyed, and I don't know how they quite quantify it, but they're the polling company of the world. They've surveyed and studied 98% of the worldwide population. And from that, they have built these models. And what I love about Gallup, and I'm a Gallup Strengths Coach, in addition to I'm a coach for a variety of different tools that are out there. What I love about Gallup is it is really based in science, right? They take their data and they apply it to principles and they give application to to the learnings that they have. So we're going to learn about life well lived. We're going to talk about living your best life. And they have 3 areas that they really talk about as it relates to you living your best life: taking charge and creating action. And you're going to get the chance, depending on how the conversation goes, you're going to get the chance maybe to get into a small breakout to talk to each other about some of the things you might be doing about well-being. So let's talk about the changing workplace. Crazy world we're living in. All right. So we have the pandemic response and what's going on. How about this number? As of March 2022, all right, the job openings and labor turnover report, I want to get the name of the report right, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released that at least 4 million American workers have quit their jobs each month since July 2021. That means as of March, there were over 33 million people who have quit their jobs. Some people call it the Great Resignation. Some people are calling it the Great Reshuffle, but it is very real and it's happening in business. I was just at a Medina manufacturing organization this morning, and what they were saying is they had 35% attrition rate. That's low compared to what I'm hearing. So here's, this is a very real piece of it. When we're looking at the changing workplace and the pandemic response from people they have left the business, right? They said, we're out of here. So we've got also the percentage of remote and hybrid workers. How many of you, just by show of hands, are working remote? You have a remote policy. You have that remote. You're going to see, and it'll be interesting because there's a lot of studies out there. They're trying to figure out, is it sustainable, right? And that's the piece I think that business is trying to figure out. Sustainable. I think productivity, it's kind of holding its own, but the sustainability is a lot around the retention of people. Because again, you don't get the chance to have some of the interactions you normally do. So we'll see what happens with that. Technology disruptors. All right, good news, bad news. A lot of silver linings with what happened with COVID, right? We have trainings that are like this, right? We've learned how to use our tech so much differently, and that is only going to continue to be enhanced. Instant messaging, Zoom, Teams, you name it. There is a plethora of technology that is enabling us to continue to work. Thank goodness, right? There's collaborative platforms, there's big data, there's the Internet of Things, there's artificial intelligence. AI is trying to help lay in on some areas with customer service, things like that. So we'll see how technology disruptors will continue to help businesses, but in the same time, it is also a stress point for people. We have now 6 generations in the workplace, 6. So, I don't know if you've seen, there's some companies I know they have people that are in their 70s and late 70s that are continue to work, and you have people that are walking in the door that are 17, 18 years old. So it's a very dynamic, complex workplace, right? It's hard for companies, I don't know about you, driving down Lake Road in Medina, driving down 18, every business has a help wanted sign. All right. So it is far more complex, not only to find people, but to retain people and to make sure that the people that are within your workplace feel engaged. And then obviously there's the whole piece around accelerated agility, meaning we have learned that we have to be able to turn on a dime, right? We need to be able to turn very, very quickly based on the needs of the business, based on supply chain needs, based on shortages that are going on, labor shortages that are going on. We have had to force ourselves to be far more agile than we've ever been in business. Again, it's a challenge, but it's also a silver lining. You're seeing businesses do things they've never thought they could. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's, as leaders, those are some of the things that you have to help people with. So an understanding of change management is a really important tool that you're going to have to utilize a lot in your leadership, because the speed is just going to continue to accelerate. So let's talk about well-being now. All right, so let's talk these statistics. these are some scary statistics, right? The cost of poor well-being. All right. The cost of turnover and the loss of productivity globally, $322 billion in lost productivity, right? 15 to 20% of total payroll is now attributable to voluntary turnover costs on average, and much of it due to burnout. And we're going to talk about burnout in a second. So for 20 million of additional lost opportunity for every 10,000 workers due to struggling and suffering of employees. And we're going to talk about the struggling and suffering that you'll see with some of the employees. And then what we talked about in the beginning of this is the medical costs. So when we say, and when your leaders say, why are you wasting time on wellness and well-being and all of this, all these emotional things that are people historically have won, there is a very real business case as to why we should and could. All right. Here's some more. So well-being affects engagement, and engagement, really is about the person's willingness and their engagement, that they feel like they have purpose, that they belong in an organization. That is what are the ties that bind. But what's happening is a lack of well-being in the experience, a high degree of burnout that people feel. Think about families, parents with young children. They are struggling with so very much, right? They're trying to balance their work, keeping their job, keeping their family together, making sure the kids, they go to school and somebody comes with an outbreak of COVID. There's a lot that's going on. So people get burned out. They're stressed, right? So 61% of people are likely or more often are always experiencing burnout. That's a frightening statistic when it comes to the business of business, right? 48% of people that are out there are more likely to report daily stress. All right. 66% are saying they experience daily worry. So stress is different than worry. Worry is that, it's that really powerful emotion that really can be debilitating, as far as they're worrying about their job, they're worrying about their family, they're worrying about their finances, they're worrying about their friends, you name it, they're worrying. And two times more people are saying they have daily sadness or anger. Here's the good news of all of this. This is stuff that we can intervene on for ourselves and for others. So I lay the business case out for you to start. Don't get depressed about it, right? There are things that we can do to make this better. And I think that's really what is really important on this. Now, let me talk to you just about two things because we kind of interchange the words. I want to talk to you about wellness versus well-being, all right? So wellness is living a healthy lifestyle beyond acute illness, all right? It refers to the state of physical health, all right, where people have the ability and the energy to do what they want to do in life without chronic suffering. So this is kind of when we talk about wellness programs, these are things that very much involve a lot of healthy lifestyle, all right? Well-being encompasses the broader holistic dimensions of each person's life. And let me tell you what those are. So remember, we said that Gallup studied 98% of the world's population, and they were asking the questions. They've been asking the questions about well-being and what matters to people in living a good life, right? And these are the 5 areas that they talk about as it relates to well-being. So we start at the top with career well-being, which is you like what you do every day. Now, we all know there's days that we don't love our jobs, but generally speaking, when you're talking about career well-being, you look forward to coming to work. You feel like there's a purpose to the work that you do. All right. That there is something that you do that brings purpose to you as maybe, and perhaps to the world. So that's what career well-being is. The second element is social well-being. And social well-being is that you have meaningful friendships in your life, both at work and at home. So think about what remote work has done to that, right? The social piece of, we're pack animals. Humans are pack animals. We like to work with others. We like to be around others. I mean, there's introverts and there's extroverts. There's all kinds of things around that. But generally speaking, Human beings tend to be pack animals. So they like to work with others. They like to be around others. They learn from others, right? So from the social well-being perspective, remote work has taken a big hit on the social well-being. All right. Frankly, I mean, come on, we weren't able to have Christmas some years and some of the holidays with our families. That all got impacted during these past couple of years. Hopefully we're on the upward trend and we're going to kind of get back to normal as normal will be. But social piece is a second element of well-being. Now, third, and this is an interesting piece, it's financial. And it's not just about the money you make. In fact, it really is money. Money matters. Let's not be unrealistic. Money absolutely matters when it comes to people, right? What you earn, how you earn it, things like that. But what Gallup has discovered, it is the financial well-being comes from your ability to manage your money well. So that means regardless of what you earn, you're able to manage your life with it. All right. So when people, that's why with people that are earning hourly wages that perhaps are lower, they can still have financial well-being if they know how to manage that money. So that's the third piece. The physical well-being, and this is of course about, the food you eat, the exercise you get, and the sleep you get. By show of hands, how many of you struggle with sleeping? Yeah, there's a whole new study out there about sleep hygiene, right? Do you sleep with your phone next to your bed? There you go. That's one of what they're talking about a lot is the blue screens. You need an hour and a half before you go to bed to get no screens. So, and that's hard if you have kids, right? So you've got to have your phone near you because you're worried about your kids. But that's something to think about. There's all kinds of studies out there now about sleep hygiene because it is what they've come to understand. It is such an important component to physical well-being, right? When you sleep well, you can handle the stress better. When you don't sleep well, your nerves are on end. So that's a big piece of this. Now, when they're talking about this, it is all about not just are you most fit, but do you have the energy to get things done? I don't know about you, but when I'm not feeling my best, I am, I struggle with energy, right? So it's like, I can't get that. I don't have the energy to get things done. I'd like to have a nap in the afternoon, right? So that's a piece that I also know when that happens, I'm usually out of my regimen as far as physical fitness or eating, I've not eaten well the last couple of days. So you pay attention to that because it does affect that. And then finally, community. That's the fifth element, which is where you live. You like where you live. And I think Medina has a very community spirit. I mean, and certainly
I agree.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it has a lot of community. Right. And they do, and this group does a lot for that,
Yeah.
right? So it is, you like where you live.
We've got a group of doers here, that's for sure.
And that's exactly what this is, because community well-being is not just about liking where you live. It is about investing in your community, which is what this group does, which is amazing. So these are the 5. I'm curious if there's questions that you have about the 5. Is there something in chat, Colleen? Or was that you?
Yeah, and somebody did comment and said that, that definitely that physical one, you're not only just worrying about your kids, worrying about your elderly parents. And so we did have a little comment about that in there. Yeah, and I think it's really neat to kind of see these out here like this, because it's just a great reminder. I think all of us know these things are part of a life well lived, but I think it's easy to forget when we're doing it day by day that these are things that we should be thinking about.
And we tend to focus a lot when we think about well-being. It's the physical. We do. That's the natural thing, because that's the easiest thing to diagnose, right? That I'm off, I'm not sleeping well, my nerves are a little bit on end, I don't have the energy. But what we're gonna talk about is a couple other things. So I want to talk a minute about emotional well-being. Now, I am not a psychologist, but I spend a lot of time working with them in the work that I do. And I'm going to give you a plug for a psychologist. And I know that you work with Alternative Pathways, which is an amazing organization in Medina. There is another amazing organization for mental health services in Portage County, and it's Portage Pathways. Pathways, let me see, I just want to get this right. Portage Path Behavioral Health. So that's another, because sometimes, because I know that sometimes some of the mental health services can get overwhelmed. So you need an alternative. And Dr. Tracy Yeager, who is the president of that and has been with that organization for years and years and years, they do great work. She and I were talking about really, so where does emotional well-being, because emotional well-being is not part of this. So emotional well-being is kind of the crown that sits on the top of all five, right? That your emotional well-being is really a function of, that helps to dictate everything that goes on. So you have to attend to that, and you have to pay attention to that with the people that you work with, right? What they're saying is now mental health is going to be the actual next new pandemic. I'll give you these statistics. 47% of adults report a decline in their mental health as compared to the onset of COVID 2 years ago. And they also say in this report is one of the values is virtual care. So now they're starting to offer virtual care in the mental health services, which is great. And maybe Colleen, if you wanted to talk a minute about alternative path, if there's something that you want to share about that.
We had a really good experience with them. We always have a good experience with alternative paths, but we had an opportunity to have them come in and do the QPR training with our class this year. And our class actually took it on as a project to promote QPR in the community. And for those of you who don't know what QPR is, it's basically CPR, but it's for people who are thinking about or contemplating suicide. So it helps people understand how they can intervene. They don't need to be a therapist or a licensed individual to just ask a question and make a referral for that person to get help. And I was so happy to hear this year that I did get a report from someone in the class who actually was able to put this into action, and they did intervene with somebody who was thinking about harming themselves. And so I think the more that people know and have the tools and know that it's okay to go out and get help. I think some of the greatest leaders that I personally admire have all seen therapists,
Right.
and it's an okay thing for people to go do. And but I love the fact that Alternative Paths is doing this. So if you want them to come into your workplace, that you would do that training. And I know that I think I've seen a lot of you on the trainings already that the class has been putting together. But if it's something that you've missed, just message me, or I can actually probably put it in the chat about how to access the QPR training through Alternative Paths.
So thank you. And, and the stigma is not there anymore. I mean, that's the piece that as leaders, we have to make sure that we are talking about mental health issues in our workplace. Not only for ourselves, right? It's for the benefit of for ourselves to understand that, we're human too. We suffer from the human conditions like everybody else, but letting people know that this is a place and it's a safe place to have a conversation and get them to the right place. I think the other piece to keep in mind as it relates to this is, and this is a new terminology that's out there. We have absenteeism, right? So that's the person doesn't show up to work. Now there's a new term called presenteeism. They're reporting to work, but they're not there. You're seeing people they miss meetings, they miss deadlines. Their work is not as good as it normally is. They're getting into little conflicts with people at work. That is what they're calling as presenteeism, which is just another way for you to start to pay attention to what they may be showing up to work, because we all pay attention to those that don't show up to work, right? There's a signal there. But now think about the people that are there, and think about most people are here. Their presenteeism is when they're working remote too, is they're here, they're on Zoom, or maybe they're not showing their videos. Those are things you have to kind of get under and really start to dig at to understand what's going on with that person. So think of that. Just remember, absenteeism, presenteeism is a new terminology in what's going on in the world. Now I'm going to throw up a poll, and here's the polling question. Let me find it here real quick. So the polling question, do you see it? Can you see it? No, you can't see this, can you? Can you see the poll?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see.
Okay. Okay. So the poll is, which of the five that we just assume emotional well-being, like I said, is the crown, right? It's always important. You always have to be mindful of it. But as we're looking at Gallup's 5, which of the 5 is most important to you right now? You get to choose one. Career well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, or community well-being, if you would be so kind as to vote. Is it letting them vote, Colleen? It's not.
No.
It doesn't seem like it's, yeah, it said,
We're seeing results, I think, but not.
okay.
That's not it. Why don't you do me a favor and throw it in the chat, and maybe if you could eyeball it for us, Colleen. I don't know why the poll's not working.
Absolutely, and great.
So again, career well-being, you can just put in career, social, financial, physical, or community. Just throw that into the chat.
So we got social well-being, financial, physical, social, physical, community, physical, financial, lots of physical here.
I mean, how many of us have put on our COVID 10 or 15?
Yeah, it looks like
Right,
physical.
right. We've got to work on that. I mean, that's something we've got, because that impacts a lot of stuff.
And we also we had a comment too that alcoholic beverage expenditure per capita in Medina County was $821.20 in 2021, which is up from $727.30 in 2020. So to put
Like
that
a 15% increase. Yeah. Alcoholism and drug use. All right. Let's talk about Medina County. We have a lot, right? We have a lot of people with addiction issues here. And the world that we're living in right now has only made it more challenging. All right. So that's the other piece. And I don't know if many of you work in organizations that you do second chances with people and things like that. Be mindful of that. It's a really important component for people right now is drug and alcohol use is on the increase a lot. And that goes hand in hand with stress, anxiety, and depression. All right. So those are things that, again, you have to pay attention to when if you're walking through the place and and you're talking to somebody and you smell alcohol, you probably have to think about what you're going to do to try to help intervene.
Krista just added that the Ohio per capita is $651.50.
Wow.
So just the difference between Medina County. Did you want to comment on that, Krista?
No, I just wanted to put that perspective in there, just so by comparison, so people understand that's rather unique to our county in particular.
And that is unusual, because it is a little bit more rural community. I mean, it's interesting to see. It's a good mixture. It is both city and some rural pieces in Medina County. So we'll see how that transpires. But again, I think a lot of this is stress, anxiety, and depression. That's where people naturally turn to is a glass of wine, right? Or a beer, or, or your favorite cocktail. That is a natural course of what, maybe they only had it on weekends. Maybe now they're having it a couple nights a week. If you start to see people coming in blurry-eyed, pay attention. These are the times as leaders, you must be present and be paying attention to people more than you ever have. All right. So thank you for sharing that. Let me turn to this next page, which is how Gallup looks at living your best life. And I want you to think about the people you work with, and I want you to think about yourself. Again, I'm asking you to think about, you're kind of bifurcating how you're taking this information in. Think about yourself, and then think about the team that you may lead or the team that you work with, right? So Gallup has what they call this net thriving score, right? It's the other GDP for countries and the other stock price for organizations. And much like a stock price, it indicates both current and future earnings, right? So Gallup's net thriving assesses the current and future resiliency of your workforce. So it's interesting, all right? That's why I love Gallup. So their net thriving is derived from a simple 2-part question, all right, that sorts people into one of 3 well-being categories. And the well-being categories you see on the screen. Thriving, where people have positive views of their present life and over the future, the next 5 years. So they feel positively about them. So that's a person that has a thriving life. A persons that are struggling are people who struggle in their present life and have uncertainty or perhaps a negative view. They don't see the future is very bright, right? They're not wearing the shades that says the future's so bright, you got to wear shades. That's the thriving group. This is a group that says, I really don't know how it's going to be in the next few years, and I'm worried. Or I really don't think it's going to get any better. All right. So that's the struggling. And then the third is people who are suffering. And these are people that report their present lives are miserable and they have a negative view of the future. And we all know people in all 3 categories. All right. You have to figure out where you're at. All right. Now, here's the question that's asked. Question 1. All right. So imagine that it's a ladder with steps numbered from 0 at the bottom to 10 at the top. All right. So, and the top represents your best possible life. The bottom is your worst possible life, 0. All right. So the first question is, on which step of the ladder would you say you personally feel you stand on at this time? So that's the present. All right. So for people that are thriving, their present scores tend to be 7 and above. All right. Their future scores tend to be 8 and above. They're very optimistic about the future. And here's what's novel about this group. They report fewer health issues. They have less worry. They have less stress. They have less depression. They have less anger. They have a lot more hope, happiness, energy, interests, and respect for others. So, and it's respect for others. See, that's an important piece. We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all these things. Everything works around the relationship of people at work. All right. So think about that. So think where you might score right there. All right. So then the struggling group, again, they are struggling today. They're about their present life, and they really have uncertainty or negativity about what their future is. Their present life scores tend to be in a range of 5 to 6. Their future life scores 5 to 7. All right. These people report daily stress and worry about, a lot of it's about money here. All right. So there's a lot and money impacts this one quite a bit. In addition to other things, but money tends to surface a lot on that, where people are struggling. Then the people who are suffering, remember, they're just down. They're having a really hard time. Their present life score is 4 and below, and their future life score is 4 and below. All right. And so these are people that report a lack of basics. This is Maslow's tier 1, food and shelter. They are struggling to pay their rent. They're struggling to make sure that they've got gas in their cars right now, right? They're more likely, this group is more likely to have physical pain, lots of stress, worry, sadness, anger. And oftentimes this group also struggles. They have less access to health insurance. And they tend to have 2 times more of a disease burden. So, and we know what stress does to the body. So here's, again, think about where we were. All right, well, I'm going to go back. Thriving, struggling, or suffering. Think about yourself, where you sit. And there's days you'll bounce around. The key is we have to isolate, and we have to find the people that are suffering right now and figure out what we can do. We've seen the wage increases that have helped, I think, some of these, but the challenge now is everything else has gone up for these people. The gas has gone up, rent has gone up, food has gone up. So they are struggling a lot. So making sure that you can help them and understand who they are and what you can do. Especially that group, access to EAP programs is really, really helpful. The other piece of it is financial, bring in financial experts to come help them with debt reduction, things like that. That can help a lot with both struggling and suffering. So those are some of the things that as leaders we can start to do to start to change this. All right. So when we think about ultimately where we want to be, which is career net thriving, right? So this is where you wake up every day and you've got purpose. You feel like your work is interesting. You feel like you've got skills and you've got talents that to be successful. So think about strengths, right? That you're playing to your strengths, right? That when you do things well, people acknowledge it. And you enjoy what you do best and you make a difference in your world. So think about the people maybe that perhaps are working with you and for you. What do you do to help them feel this way? Now, here's a statistic you should be really mindful of too. 70% of the employee's experience is based on their relationship and their immediate manager. How their immediate manager teaches them, trains them, acts with them, leads them. 70%. So when people say they quit their boss, it's kind of true. So this is a piece that, and again, things that we can control. What can you do to help make sure that people feel that their work is more interesting? It's connected to something bigger. If you're in a manufacturing, help them understand where that fastener fits in a car at GM, right? So make them feel like there's some purpose, right? Make sure that you understand what their skills and their talents are. Help them work in strength, right? That they're working on things that they do really well. So when we think about thriving at work and we think about career well-being, because we're going to talk a little bit about career well-being after another, hopefully a polling question that works, is career well-being is 5 components of it. Doing what I love, right? I see a clear path towards success. So I can see from where I am here to success, whatever success is for you, right? I have what I need to do my job and to do it well, right? I admire and connect with my coworkers. That's why it's important to make sure that that you are connecting people together, right? And then I fulfill my purpose. So in the end, what this really means is I'm clearly focused and supported. I'm working from my strengths. I contribute to something that matters, and I'm with people who care. That's a pretty cool workplace, right? Now, the question is, can we accomplish that? And the answer is, yeah, we can. All right. So I'm curious. We're gonna talk about and what Gallup says. And I think, and I had first I had a problem with it. I'll be honest with you. I had a problem with their original premise of this. What they said, if you have all 5 of these elements and you can only work on one, the one to work on is career. And here's the rationale behind it. And I really thought about it, and I ask you to think about it. Because if you work on your physical, you're going to we all can fix our physical if we worked out and ate right and got some rest, right? We can fix that. As long as we're not burdened with a lot of disease and then you need medical intervention. So physical is really going to impact physical. Maybe it'll help a little bit with social because you'll feel better about yourself. All right. If you focus only on money, well, maybe you'll be more in your community because you'll be able to contribute more in your community. Maybe you'll be more generous with your friends. Okay, I get that. But with career, if you're working on your career well-being, that impacts social, friends at work, friends outside of work, because of you feel like you've got your career under control. It affects your financial. It affects your physical because you're feeling accomplished. You have maybe make more time, you have better time management, things like that. And you're feeling good and you're feeling in charge that you can start to contribute better to your community. So that's why they say, if nothing else, you focus on career because it will have a positive impact on all the other 4. So where do you start? All right. So where you start is you start where you are, right? Like anything in life, right? You determine where your current state is. Determine where you want to be. We talked about, so what do you want in your career? What do you want out of your career? You invested this time in Leadership Medina and all the different programs that are part of this programming. What is it that you want for your career? And where's that future state? Then you have to identify where I'm at, where I want to be. What are the gaps that get me? And maybe Leadership Medina, learning these leadership skills can help. And applying these leadership skills back at work could help. But what else are their gaps? You need to identify those. And then you have to create action steps in order to move forward for that. Simple coaching model that you would use with your team as well as with yourself. Identify current state, determine where you want to go, identify the gaps, and create an action step. And I think that's a lot of the principles, Colleen, right behind a lot of your programming. Anything you want to share on that?
Well, it's definitely a lot of things that we're talking about in the LEAD Institute, I'd say, with the professional development that we're doing in Terry's program. And yeah, I think it does fit that model very well.
Perfect. So, and I think this is a solid coaching model for anything in life, right? Current state, future state, gaps, and action plan. Okay. It's something that the key is to take action. It's not just to get stuck. And I think that's part of this. And that's what happens with people when their well-being is not high, right? They're struggling. They feel like they're stuck. And as leaders, our job is to help pull them out of that. So they can give them a little push, a little nudge, a little help, so they can help lift themselves out of that. And that's the role of leaders. All right. So these are the 5 that we've talked about. I'm going to ask you to pull out your handout that looks just like this. All right. And I'm going to ask you to go on a little bit of a journey with me on this. All right. So for those of you who have taken the strengths program, hopefully you remember what your top 5 were. All right. In the center here, I want you to, of the 5 areas, career, social, financial, physical, or community, I want you to identify what do you need to be your very best. So which of these 5 elements, and you put that right in the center. So is it career? Is it social? Is it financial? Is it community? Is it physical? So write that in the middle. All right. Then, for those of you that have taken strengths, you would write your top 5 around that ring, right? So you'd write your achiever or your positivity or your relator or your arranger or your learner, whatever those 5 areas are, write that around the ring.
And I went ahead and put a link to the Gallup Strength Finder list in case you just can't remember what yours are, or if you'd like to just look through them and see if there's something
that's great. Thank you, Colleen. Oh, you're on it. Thank you very much. So, and if you have not taken the strength finders, right? What I'd like you to think about is what you feel are your top 5 strengths as a person, right? Until you can take the actual profile. What are the top 5 strengths that you bring to the table that could impact your career well-being? And then you have to ask yourself this question. If I know these are my strengths, and I know that this is the element that I want to focus in on, let's say it's career well-being, right? And then you want to ask yourself, what is getting in my way of thriving right now in that area of well-being? Knowing that I have these strengths, because here's what happens more often than not, and Colleen, I'm sure you'll nod with this. It's a lot of our own self-limiting beliefs that get in our way, right? And sometimes it's some very real stuff that gets in, that impacts us, like your company is acquired by somebody else, or you've got a big jerk for a boss. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of different things. But in the end, this is our world, and we have to try to figure out how we're going to control it, right? So what are the things that are getting in your way of thriving? And if you remember, thriving is that you have a positive view about your present life and you have an optimistic view about the future. All right. So what is it that's getting in your way? And then again, you see on the left, What actions can I take to bridge that gap? And which of my strengths can I use to accomplish that? So think in the center is the element of well-being, one of the 5 that you're going to work on. The outer ring that surround that are your strengths from Strength Finders. You have to ask yourself the question is, what's getting in my way of thriving? That optimistic view of the world, right? All right. And then what actions do I need to take in order to accomplish, to get from point A to point B, from where I want to be, where I'm at today to where I want to be? And how can my Clifton strengths help me to achieve that? Colleen, is there anything you'd want to share on that?
Yeah, it's good. I'm looking at my strengths from when I took it a long time ago, and yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in this way before. So I've got strategic and connectedness for 2 of my strengths, and of course the physical. I'm probably with the majority in the group online. I really want to work on that. And so, but it looks like I've got the strengths that could get me there.
So your connectedness is you can start a walking club.
Yeah, and I'm just stuck. I'm stuck with what's getting in my way of thriving. That's where I'm stuck.
What do you think it is, though?
Just the excuses I give myself, not enough time, not, there's other things that I need to do that are more important, those kinds of things. Yeah.
And so then we have to be, then your connectedness. So then here's where you use your connectedness. So your connectedness is that you tell that to your friends that will understand you about this, right? And they're the people, because I have a friend a friend of mine, we work out together, right? So if I'm not feeling great, I'm like, I don't feel like going, I don't want to go. She's like, you're going because I'm going. So that's where your connectedness with others can use your strength. That's where my woo works with me. I like to go to the class, and I like to do my yoga, and I like to do my strength training. So once I'm there, I'm fine. It's just getting me there. So that's where connectedness, or like my relator here, works with my friend, and she and I go arm in arm and we go. So that's how you can start to use strength to get out of our own way to achieve some of the areas of well-being we want. Is there anybody that would want to share theirs? Like, no, I'm not going to share mine. No? All right. Just know that, so think about this. All right. So think about this in the context now of the people you work. So this is something we want you to work on. All right. So again, part of what we're trying to do is get out of our own way. All right. And I think we do this, especially, and I'm going to say this, the world is complicated, right? The world is very complicated, but we have to find a way to take care of our own well-being, right? Because if we're not strong and healthy, it's very difficult for us to lead well. All right. So you have to start with you. And this is where you start with. Now I want you to think about the people you work with, right? And I want you to think about those people. And I want you to write down a couple of questions that you're going to ask yourself. All right. The first is, and this is really important as it relates to retention of employees, right? Because employees need to feel like they belong to something. That belonging piece is that's where engagement happens with an organization. It is the tie that binds, all right? So they feel like they belong. They have a purpose, that they have friends, they have all these things that we've just been talking about. So here's the question you have to ask yourself as a leader. How would my team benefit from additional information about purpose and goals? Right? So you're connecting them to the organization. All right. That's question 1. Question 2, is the vision of the future clear for my team? And that's something to really think about. You know, again, remember we talked in the beginning, what's changed in the workplace. The work is very complex. The work is very, we have to all be more agile than we've ever been. So sometimes we don't have a lot of clarity on where we're going. That's a really important component for your team. They need to understand where the future is, right? And that's your job to give that to them. Your job is to give them that future, all right? Then you have to ask them, what part of your role, the job that you do, gives you the most energy? So then you're going to start to get to some of the strengths, even though they maybe not have taken the Clifton strengths, but you're going to get to the question of what gives them the most energy, because that's what they love doing. You get energized when you're doing things that you love, right? And then how does your work help to fulfill the purpose of the team? So how do you connect to the team and how do you connect to the company? If you get that clear and you start to communicate those things to the team members, you'll be surprised at how you'll start to connect to them. They'll feel more engaged. They will feel like there is purpose to the work other than just showing up and taking a paycheck home, right? That there is more to it. And the only people they're going to be able to help bring that to them are you as their leaders. That's an important piece that you have to do. All right. So when we think, I'm going to ask this question for you, and think about it for the team members that you work with. Do you think that they love what they do? Do you think that they have a clear path towards success? You'd be surprised because we as leaders in the speed of business today, we sometimes just assume that they know how to get from here to here to get to be positioned for promotability or a wage increase or a new role. If we haven't told them, they probably don't really know. So that's an important piece of it. Do they have the tools they need to get their job done and to continue to be promoted? Question for you and question for them. Do you admire and connect with your coworkers?
I have something to share with that.
Please.
This is from Annie Finnerty, actually. So Annie, I'm calling you out on this, but it's something that they do over at Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities. What's that positive rumor thing again, Annie? Do you want to share?
So we start our management team, which is upper management, starts every management team meeting with what we call a positive rumor. So it's something that is positive that has happened throughout our work day or our work week, so that we're starting with positive thoughts versus, getting stuck in the stuff that has gone wrong. So we are focused on that.
That is tremendous because it sets the tone for people, right? Ken Blanchard, who's, the management guru of, one of the really renowned one. I was on a conference call with they had all these coaches all over the world that he was talking about. He said, the only thing that naturally happens in an organization is skepticism and negativity. The only antidote to that is leadership. And that is the truth. All right. So when you think about thriving at work, they're right on. Do I love what I do? Do I see the future of success? Do I have the tools and the resources I need to get it done? Do I like who I work with? Do I admire them? And does it fulfill my purpose? How does that fulfill my purpose? Think about yourself and think about them. And then I'm going to ask you to now take action. And these are the things that as leaders, I'm going to ask you to really think about. First and foremost, make sure that everyone in your organization understands and knows their strengths. Whether you're doing Clifton strengths or not, ask them. One of the things that we do in our leadership principles is we ask people to sit down with each member of their team and say, tell me what your strengths are. Even if you can't do Clifton's, at least you get a sense of that. All right. Well, my superpower is this. All right. That's beautiful. How do we start to leverage it? Now, here's the thing that has to happen universally, unilaterally, and it's a problem. I know we get it because there's not enough people there's not enough managers, but we have got to get rid of these abusive managers. We all know them. We've worked for them. We've heard about them. They have got to get out of the way because they are damaging your organizations. You either have to get them trained or you have to get them out. And, and that's some of the things that as leaders, you do not put your head in the sand about this. If you have supervisors that work for you or peers that work for you that are abusive, you have got to help to intervene on that because it is impacting the success of your organization because people are voting with their feet and they're walking out because 70% of that of the employee experience is based on their direct manager. And if that manager is abusive, you're losing people you don't need to, and you're losing good people. All right. Upskill managers to move from boss to coach. And really that's the whole the perspective of coaching, not telling people what to do, but in asking questions to let them learn how they can improve their performance. That's the whole coaching principle. And then make well-being part of your career discussions. And that is one thing that I think I really encourage as you're doing your performance reviews or your mid-year check-ins or whatever that is. Talk to them. How are you doing? What is going on? How are things for you at home? Is there, are you aware that we have an employee assistance program? Are you aware, they help you with legal issues, financial issues, whatever you need. Build it into the conversation so it's not this taboo topic. It is a topic that I'll give you a quick story. It was with I was talking to a partner in an accounting firm, and she was noticing some changes in one of the guys who was traditionally really solid performer, not a superstar, but a solid performer. But she noticed some things that were changing, and she talked to me about it. I said, "You need to ask the question, what's going on?" She said, "I knew there was something going on. I didn't know what was going on." And she asked a simple question. She said, "Bill," we'll say his name is Bill. "Bill, I've noticed some things that are going on. Is there something that is going on at home that we can help you with?" And the floodgates opened. And she learned so many things that were going on with him. He felt like he was a failure at work, a failure at home. He was, he's worried about his kids. He was financially sad. It wasn't about finances in this. He was feeling like he was not delivering what he should as a father and as a husband. And she got him into counseling, and he is this thriving guy now. And his performance is exceptional, and his family life is so much better. But she had the courage to ask the question. Now, talk to your HR people to make sure that they are cool with how you're going to ask. If you're going to ask, don't go down this path by yourself. All right. HR can help you with how do you ask the questions so that it's not violating, HIPAA laws and things like that. But you have to let people know that you care and that you've noticed something that's changed in them. All right. Now, here's the last piece of it that I'm going to wrap up. And this is 7 catalysts of well-being. The first one is, again, developmental plans for people should also include well-being goals. All right. Partnering them, social, think about that. Finding mentors, finding, buddy systems at the workplace, things like that. Make sure that's part of that. Get them to move around. If they're in office, get them to get up and move. All right. Recognition. Do we celebrate and share well-being successes? All right. So are we doing that? Have we done that? What can we do more about that? Get your people to help with some of this. You don't have to figure this all out by yourself. Are your messages, especially as leaders and managers, consistent with a high-performing and net thriving culture? You would be surprised how often, if you listen to yourself, you open, unlike what Annie was saying, you open naturally with a negative. Oh, I guess we have to do this. Oh, I'm not sure we can do this. You have to listen to yourself and make sure that you're speaking from the positive, not being a Pollyanna, but trying to help them see that there is a path to success, right? Even in challenging times. Incentives. Are there incentives? And I know oftentimes with healthcare benefits, there are things that can be that people are doing. Organizations are also doing this. This was new to me. They're setting aside a little pot of money for each person that they can choose to use it for whatever they want, from pet insurance to childcare to yoga lessons or massage therapy, whatever that is. They're giving that. They're calling it a My Rewards program, something like that. And they're just putting aside a little slot of money so people can use it however they want to help their well-being. The next piece of this is make sure that pay attention to culture. Culture of your organization really matters. You can say one thing that you care about the well-being, but if you're making people work 12 hours, 7 days a week, that's a problem, right? So you have to make sure that that's, you're mindful of that, right? Or if they go on vacation, everyone's calling them. People need time away from the organization. All right. Do the rules and the guidelines of the organization facilitate and help a thriving culture? All right. In all the areas of well-being. Physical space matters, right? So the facility, can people get out and see the outdoors? If they can't, one of the things we did a couple of times is we put up tents so people can go out there in the summer, and they had shelter. They can go, they have picnic tables under there. They can go down and they can move around the space. They can get outdoors and they can go for meetings that are out there, right? And that are the 7 catalysts of well-being. Does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about? We covered a lot of ground. We learned a little bit about what's changed at work. We've learned about the 5 elements of living a life well lived. We've talked about living your best life, from thriving to struggling to suffering. And we've talked about how you can start to take charge and looking at strengths and how to do that. Are there questions that I can answer for you in the next 30 seconds?
I just saw a lot of head nodding, Judy, a lot of smiling. I think that people got a lot of nuggets out of this for sure. So I'm seeing messages coming in. Thank you. Excellent information, very thought-provoking. So
Good.
I think people are walking away with a lot of things that they can do today, Judy. Just thank you so much for sharing this wonderful presentation.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Just a couple other things I want to tell you about in the handout. There is a nice little, I'm not sure why all these check marks are here. That's the goal, I guess, to achieve all of the 5. But look at this page where it's reflecting on your individual well-being. It's a good couple of questions. And when I asked myself a couple of these, I'm like, I've got areas I got to work on, right? And then again, look at some coaching questions based on that. All right. So there's some good nuggets even in the handouts that we hope. And I think that the other piece that I want to say is you can make a difference. You absolutely can. And you do make a difference. Just keep being the leaders that you can and will be. Wade into this conversation with your team. Everyone will be better for it. So with that, I wish you a good snowy afternoon. Spring will be coming. It will be. Mother Nature's just letting us know that she's still in charge. And I wish you the very best. I'll see you hopefully in the future. I'll have another topic that Colleen, I'll share with you and Terry, maybe towards the fall.
That sounds great. We look forward to having you back all the time, Judy. Have a great day, everyone. And thanks for participating.
Take care. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.